Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Paranormal Stories. First up we have Is My Home Haunted by Throw Pillows in Zin. Or I can just be hysterical. Anyways, my family bought this house when I was a little girl, maybe about between 6 and 8 years old. And I can't remember much about my childhood now, but I can remember a lot about the house. When I finally got my own room because my aunt moved out, I'd be asleep at night. I could vividly hear someone pacing back and forth in my room. We had carpet, and everyone knows what feet on carpet sound like. My room wasn't very big since I had a large dresser, a big bed, and a big shelf, so the pacing would be very close to my bed. I remember asking my parents why they were walking in my room, because I used to keep my door open, and they responded, "We'd be asleep, we never walked in your room." So ever since then, I've slept with my door closed, because if it's open, it squeaks really loudly and lets me know if someone enters my room. Ever since I've slept with my door closed, the pacing would stop, which was sometime around 6th or 7th grade. The same time in middle school, maybe summer of 8th grade, I was home alone. My brothers were with my grandma and aunt. My parents were out, and it was just me. I sat in the living room with just the TV and pitch blackness. Then I got a gut feeling saying, "You can't stay in the house." I ignored it, saying I was just scaring myself because of the dark. I kept ignoring it, and the gut feeling got stronger till I started to feel my body genuinely shiver. Then I was just hit by a semi-struck force screaming at me to get out of the house. I jumped up immediately, ran to my room, locked the door, and called my grandma. I demanded she come and get me because something is wrong with the house. I was so frantic, I probably sounded like I was on drugs to her. When she finally agreed to come and get me, I wasted no time running out of the house and sitting in the bed of my dad's truck at 2 o'clock in the morning. I didn't have shoes on. I didn't pack a bag or anything. I literally just ran out with my phone and nothing else. We got the essentials. The family would make fun of me for this experience, till they started having their own scary experiences, which I'll come back to later, so the timeline flows better. Then sometime in high school I had grown a bit accustomed to the weirdness of the house. Around freshman year I remember it being the weekend and the house was alive. Everyone was awake and bustling, and my aunt plus parents were trying to get my baby brother, who was a toddler, to sleep in his own room. He never wanted to, and we all just chalked it up to baby separation anxiety. Until I had gone to the bathroom, I didn't have my glasses on, and I walked past his bedroom. In order to exit the bathroom, you have to walk past his bedroom. His door was wide open and the light was on, but as I walked past, I completely saw a little boy, maybe 6 years old, in a striped shirt and wearing a baseball cap. I froze, contemplating if it was real or not, but I was too afraid to look back, so I kept walking. I told my aunt and my mom about it. Then it prompted me to actually look into the history of the house. Of course, someone owned it before us, a man and his family, which consisted of kids. I assume my parents never knew this because they were in awe at learning who used to live here before us, but my aunt just looked horrified. She said she always knew children lived here before they bought the house. She could see faint children's drawings and writings on the wall, could even feel the house's childish spirit and more. Then I brought up the experience at 2 in the morning, which then led into more stories about the house. My aunt explained that she stopped sleeping over because the house felt evil at night. Our hallway and living room are short, but she explained that when you sleep in the living room, it felt as if the darkness of the hallway was deeper than the darkness of the living room, despite there being almost no light in both. Just picture a pitch-black living room, and then an even pitcher-black hallway, with no in-between, like the darkness between the two doesn't mix. She also said that when she'd watch movies, she'd feel as if it wasn't just us watching movies, but felt other things with us. A family of 6 watching a movie felt like a crowded room of 15 to her, basically. she stopped staying late after the feelings and eeriness happened every time she stayed over, so she knew it wasn't just a one-time thing. Recently, I'm out of school for college now, and when I came back, my grandma, my mom's mom, said she hated sleeping in my room, which was odd because my bedroom was really the only available room to sleep in. I asked her why, and she said, "I don't know, it just feels scary in there." I didn't press it further because I knew what she meant. I rearranged my room so it was more spacious, but ever since I rearranged it, it felt like the corner space where my shelf used to be harbored something else, some type of entity that you could feel but almost never see unless you really focused in the deep darkness. I simply told her, "Yeah, that's why I fall asleep with the TV on." I didn't tell her how I felt about the weird being that feels like it watches you from the corner, but she picked up on what I meant because now when she stays the night, she sleeps with the TV on in the living room. Further down the line, I woke up early at like 4 to 6 a.m., somewhere there, because I wanted to see my mom before she left for work. I got a knock on my door, so I assumed it was my mom, and when I called out, there was no response. I'd been watching TV, so I assumed it must have been a knock from the show I was watching, but I rewound so far back and never heard the knock. I went to my mom's room and asked her, "Did you knock on my door?" She responded, "No, she's been in her bedroom the entire time and didn't even know I was awake." I felt so fucking afraid. I rewound our cameras to the exact moment I called out from my room, which was picked up by the camera, then went further back to when the knock would have happened, and the knock never was heard on camera. I kept rewinding it and even showed my mom, who assumed I was just lying or trying to scare her. She kept saying, "I don't hear anything," and I said, "Yeah, that's the point." I then pointed out to her that if I didn't hear a knock, I wouldn't have felt the need to call out. I stayed in my room for the rest of the day, barely coming out unless my grandma or siblings needed anything. We still can't figure out what it was. Then, very recently, about 2 weeks ago, I was asleep and then felt something punch me in my throat just as I was waking up. It literally hurt and stung, as if a toddler had socked me in the throat right below my chin towards the side. I knew it couldn't have been anybody in my family because I would have been able to see them running out of my room, and there was nobody. I went to my mom and told her something punched me in the throat, and we were joking about it because, at this point, we've just grown accustomed to the haunted house. I was laughing and joking until I realized I've never been attacked. I've never had whatever is in the house literally hit me. This was the first time. Whatever spirit is in the house has never done things like move items, flicker lights, etc. So the jump from just being a shy, scary entity in the corner to now being able to hit me scared the shit out of me. I fell asleep with my TV on every night at this point, and I'm finally just saying this out loud to see if I'm crazy or not. There's been smaller things happen in the house, such as shadow figures running across the hallway whenever my mom and I would watch movies. My mom explaining her room would become freezing cold despite our thermostat being between 75 and 76. And even my brothers explaining they don't like sleeping in their own rooms at the time. I forgot to mention, but this was just last week. In the middle of the night, our smoke detectors began going off. Everyone was asleep, besides for me, of course, and I assumed I set them off with incense I had been burning. But I remembered I wasn't burning incense, so then I assumed it must have been my brother doing one of his robotic projects in his room, however he was asleep. Then I immediately figured we must have had the stove gas going. But all the dials were turned off. Now this could just be some wiring in the detectors, since this has happened before. If changes in temperature can affect them. If there's optical ones, that can affect them as well, like extreme cold, extreme heat. Since this has happened before, but this time felt weird because unlike the last time, they went off for such a short duration than they normally would. The first time they went off, it was for about 2 minutes, and then they went off again for 2 minutes, and then a last time again for 2 minutes. I'm chalking this up to bad wiring because the detectors weren't saying anything. Normally they'd say fire, fire, or carbon monoxide detected, but they were just blaring with no words. I think I'm chalking this up to bad wiring because I'm afraid, because I'm slowly realizing that even if it is bad wiring, that wouldn't explain why the detectors wouldn't be announcing anything. Every single time the detectors have gone off, they've said fire, fire, even if there wasn't a fire. After this incident, I had to find my iPhone, to find my watch, which I had done about 8 p.m. I found my watch, and the day proceeded as normal. Then, at 2 or 3 a.m., my iPhone suddenly went off. I was extremely pissed off, since I was asleep, but I figured my mom had an emergency, since she was usually the one who does that to wake me up or catch my attention. However, when I went to her room, she said she didn't ping me, and that she's been asleep. I talked about it again in the morning when everyone was awake, and my mom figured it must have just been a delayed ping from when I was searching for my watch. I agreed at first. I told her I used my phone to search for my watch, not the other way around. But why would it be so delayed by 6 hours? We have no answer for this stuff. It's not totally frightening me, because in case this is one of those spirits that feed on fear, I'd rather let it starve. So, is this a ghost? Paranormal activity spirit? Or just a mix of mind games? I wish I could type more and go deeper into depth, but so many things have happened, a book could probably be written. Alright, story number 2. I Swear I Was Haunted as a Child, by Distinct Mind 3024. I've, male 22, not really told many people about this, and whenever I have, I feel most people either think I was just a kid with an active imagination or think I was crazy. But I swear this all happened. I grew up in a little terraced house in England with my mum and 3 siblings. Most of my life in that house, there was something I can't explain which used to terrorize me. Things seemed to start small and got worse over the years, spanning around 4 years. It started at night times. When I was about 8 years old, as I tried to sleep, the door would move a bit. I used to keep the door slightly open for a bit of light, and I'd hear a deep outward breathing, almost like a prolonged sigh kind of sound. It would move from the bedroom door until I could hear it pretty much standing right next to me. This happened for years, not every day, but I'd say most nights from what I can remember. I was terrified of it, and was constantly waking up the house with my screaming. Whatever it was progressed at some point, and started to say my name in exactly the same outward breath-type sound. Again, very similar to a long sigh, just now saying my name within the sigh sound. I also started getting scratches all over my body. I remember the other kids and PE teachers always questioning it when I was getting changed. At the time, I put it down to heat rashes and scratching in the night, but now I'm not too sure that was the case. There was one really bad instance at around 11 years old, where I feel I was briefly possessed by this thing. I just got a new PC game, non-violent, which only worked on our older computer setup in the dining room, away from my family who used to congregate in the living room. I started to play it, and about 20 minutes in, I hear my name called out in the same breath-like voice from right behind me. I quickly turn and briefly see a shadow seemingly sat down on the sofa. Within a second or two, it rushes at me, and everything goes black. When I wake up, I'm stood in the doorway to the living room, my hands covering my eyes and tears streaming down my face. I move my hands, and my family are all in front of me, concerned. I ask what happened, and they tell me I'd ran into the room covering my face repeatedly, screaming, "I've been shot!" I've absolutely no memory of doing this. As far as I know, it was like I had no control for 1 minute. There were many weird things which happened during this time, but it all went away at around 12 or 13 years old. I started sleeping with my head hanging out onto the windowsill, drowning out any noise from my bedroom with the sound of traffic. I feel it went away because it was no longer feeding off my energy, but I don't know. Since then, I've never really had anything happen. No noises, seeing things, etc. Maybe sometimes I get a weird energy vibe which makes my hair stand up when I walk into a room, but that's about it. Has anybody else had any similar experiences when they grew up? Did it carry on into your adulthood? Part of me thinks maybe it was just some weird stuff going on with my brain as a child, but I swear my memories of it all are so clear. Thanks for listening. Story number 3. The Shadow Outside My House by Superb Swordfish 9816. These events happened to me when I was around 9 or 10 years old. At the time, me and my family lived in a very rural area about 2 or 3 hours away from where we previously lived in a major city. For reference, we lived in a townhouse at the time, with a clear sliding glass door spanning the whole back wall. It led to the backyard, which we shared with our neighbours. I was sitting down painting on the dining table, which was directly in front of the back door. My back was facing the door. My mom was upstairs in her room, and my brother was in his. It was getting dark, but it was light enough outside for me to see my reflection in the vase on the dining table. I was sitting there painting for about 10 minutes, when something in my body tells me to stop. I stay still for a moment. It's deathly silent in the house, which is strange because my family is typically extremely noisy. I'm about to go back to painting when I get chills that run down my spine. I look up from my painting book and at the vase in front of me. From the reflection, I see behind me outside the glass door is a tall shadow figure. It reaches the top of the door and appeared to be in a long robe or dress. Other than that, I could not see any other features, just darkness. Then the figure moved across the door extremely fast. All of this happened in the span of about 2 or 3 seconds. Quickly, my legs move faster than my mind, and I race upstairs. My mom, distressed, asks me what's wrong. I tell her what happened. I say frantically and in disjointed sentences, I'm sure. My mom is the type of person to not play when it comes to things like this, as she, my grandma, and my tias have shared some of their experiences growing up in a haunted apartment. But I think the biggest reason she knew I wasn't lying is that my heart was racing. She told me not to worry, and I went off to bed. The day after, my mom discovered that the table outside in the backyard with the umbrella it was connected to were completely flipped over on the ground, as if someone shoved it. Mind you, it was not a windy night at all, and the table was extremely heavy, requiring a minimum of 3 people to move. Fast forward about a week later, I wake up in the middle of the night. I need to get a glass of water. I go downstairs where only the oven light is on. I don't want to wake up anyone in the house, so I make my way downstairs and head to the kitchen. The kitchen was directly next to the back glass door, and was just a small wall separating the two. It also had a window leading to the back wall. As soon as I stepped into the kitchen, I stop. Behind the blinds of the window, I see what looks to be the shadow of tree branches. As my eyes adjust at a closer look, it almost looks like a claw with extremely long fingers. It starts tapping on the window very audibly. I book it back to my room immediately. As I'm trying to go to sleep, I try to rationalize what happened, but I realize there is not a single tree in my backyard at all, as it leads to flat ground, then a hill up top. Shortly after, we moved back to our old house in the city, and I haven't had any experiences like that since. It probably helps that the house we live in now was built on old church grounds. Feel free to provide any explanation for what it could be. That's the end of my story. Thank you for listening. Story number 4, Corpsewood Manor, true story by Slimeballs. Slimeballs asks me to caution you all that this is a real place, but don't go there as it's not safe. Also, I'd imagine the owners don't want people, going around their property. This story is a true warning for people to never go to Corpsewood Manor. I'm posting it here so it will be documented for the rest of time, in hopes future teenagers don't go to this place. Corpsewood Manor is located on Alabama Highway in Ringgold, Georgia. Me and my friends were young in 2016 at a party, having fun, but the cops came and crashed the party. I bet they didn't even bring any booze. As we were leaving the party, we start a conference call with all the people who were there and ask what the next plan is. We couldn't find another party, so one guy suggested that we go to Corpsewood Manor. The group decided that would be the plan, so we drive there in a convoy of about 4 cars full of people. Going to Corpsewood Manor is a long drive down a dark road, and it was 2 a.m. The house has a driveway that goes about a mile into the woods. We got there, and nothing out of the ordinary happened, but as we walk away from the cars, the guy who suggested going there says, "Whatever you do, don't take anything from the house, leave everything where you found it." We all say okay, and then walk towards the house. We adventured through the remains, and still nothing crazy happened. But as we were leaving, we started getting the feeling that someone is watching us. So I asked the group, "Did anyone take anything from the house?" At this point, someone in the group pulled a brick out of his jacket pocket and showed it to us. We freaked out and said, "Throw it back." The guy threw the brick back into the darkness toward the remains of the house, and I swear to God the brick flew right back at us and landed at our feet. The brick flew back as if someone had caught it and thrown it back, almost like the brick never hit the ground until it returned to us. So now we all scream and start running back to our cars. As we're running, I look to my right and see a massive fire. The fire had to have been at least 40 feet tall and 20 feet wide. When we finally made it back to the cars, we were surrounded by hundreds of dogs. The dogs were well maintained and healthy, as if they were someone's pets. There were so many dogs that as we drove 5 miles per hour, our bumper had to push the dogs out of the way. We wanted to go faster, but we didn't want to kill hundreds of dogs. As we were driving out, I looked to the right again and noticed the bonfire had even more dogs circling around it in a counterclockwise circle. The dogs were moving as if they weren't in control of their body, just mindlessly following orders. The second time I went there was a year later in 2017. I told myself I would never go back, but somehow I let my friends convince me to go again. This time we only had one car full of people, but this time we didn't make it down the driveway. There was an old lady standing in the gravel road with no shoes on. She was wearing a nightgown and nothing else. Keep in mind the driveway is narrow and there's no room to turn around. My friend parked the car and got out and yelled, "Please move out of the way so we can turn around." And she didn't move. He yelled it again, and then she started walking towards us. My friend literally started crying and got in the car, slammed it in reverse, and we left. That was the last time I ever went there, and I'll never go there again. I firmly believe that lady was possessed. These stories are true. I just wanted to post it here so it will be well documented somewhere for the rest of time. I've researched to see if anyone else has hundreds of dogs there, and I haven't found anything. People from all around have many scary stories of the place, and I believe they are mostly true. Please never go there. I believe there's some devil worship going on. Fifth and final story today is Not Sure What Is Happening in My House for the Last Few Years by Weeping Willow Jen. Some really strange things started happening a few years back. First thing I can remember is my mom and I were in her bedroom, and we heard our front door open and then slam shut. Then I got up and went to check the whole house inside and outside. No one was there. Then a couple of days later, our doorbell rang at the door we were sitting in front of, and no one was there. Jump forward a few months, and I was putting dishes up in the cabinets, when all of a sudden a Pyrex 2-cup measuring cup exploded in my face out of nowhere. And if you know what kind of measuring cup I'm talking about, you'll know that it's with thick glass. And it was still in the cabinet when it exploded, so it wasn't dropped or anything. Also, it wasn't even hot to where it would be too hot. It was room temperature. At night, a lot of the time I'll hear someone or something walking up and down the hallway, and when I open the door immediately, no one was there. Sometimes it happens when I'm at home alone. We have several cats, and not too long my brother came into my room asking if I had moved their water bowl. After I said no, I asked him why. He explained that the cat water bowl was in front of the bathroom door, more than halfway across the house, with no water spilled, still being totally full. It was a large, very heavy one, and there's no way the cats could have done it. 2 or so nights ago I was in the kitchen making dinner. Above the sink was a window that looked into our dining room, because the living room was built years after the house was built. My mom and I distinctly heard 3 large knocks on the window, so I opened it to see who was knocking, instantly, after hearing it. and my son was on the furthest side of the living room, which made it impossible for it to have been him, because I would have seen him running away by the time I opened it. I looked at my mom and asked if she heard what I did. She did, but my son, who was there when the knocking occurred, did not hear it. My great-grandmother died in the house back in the mid-90s. I'm not entirely sure of what year, as I was so young. There are many more creepy and unsettling things that have happened, such as my mom and son and I have all seen a ghost cat. When asked what color, all of us simultaneously said black. Things will disappear for months and reappear in a place we've searched so many times. Also, through different houses in my childhood into 40 years old, I wake up with long, deep cuts on my chest seemingly from nowhere. I have very short fingernails, and with no pets in my room whatsoever, aside from my mom and son, I've always felt like no one would believe anything I said, so I never talked to anyone about it. Since this is anonymous, I have felt enough courage to finally post my lifelong experiences. Also, my son asked my mom, brother, and I, out of all of our cats, which one would be a skinwalker. Again at the exact same time, and unanimously said our Siamese cat. Oh, Coco, short for Psycho. There's just been so many different, unsettling, creepy incidents that have added up in the past 3 decades. They also shared one last story with me. I remember one night my brother was in his room, I was in my room, my son was in his room, and my mom was in her room across the house. And my brother was saying something about it sounding like a woman was standing right outside his window, growling. A creepy-sounding growl. It didn't sound like an animal at all. It sounded like a human trying to imitate an unsettling animalistic growl, but it was very obviously human sounds. And nobody was out there. And then we heard it just move down the outside of our house towards my room, and then towards my son's room. I even opened the front door, and I could hear it still, and yet there was nothing there. One of the most spine-tingling, uncanny, sinister moments we've experienced so far. And that brings us to the end of today's video, I think. Yes, it does. Big thanks to everyone who allowed me to use their stories. If you'd like to support the channel, you can sign up for my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. $1 or more gets you early access to all the videos at once on Monday. There's also a link to my merchandise store on Teespring, my Discord server, my Threads account. And if you need to contact me, it's kingofthecities@gmail.com. That's everything for now. I'm going to go make all these videos now. So until next time, thank you very much for watching, and take very good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.